So good. And we are officially live. So today on Lifestyle Medicine, I've got my brother here, David Beaudry. And David, you go by Evolutionary Cross Trainer is your sort of like official technical title, but you do medical qigong, you do a bunch of different things, I know. But is that accurate?
Yes, I've been playing with it now. I've been playing with spiritual strength coach,
Ah, nice. I
kind of
like that.
fusing the physical, and all the spiritual principles. So I feel like that is now a more succinct version of what I do.
Yeah.
Spiritual strength training coach.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. I like that, man. And it definitely fits. I mean, given what I know about you. And to give the listeners context, I met David back in, God, man, was that, what year did we meet? Was that 2011?
I think
10?
2010.
10. Okay. So we're coming up
Yeah,
on
9
10.
or 10, 2009 or 10.
Okay. So we're coming up on 10 years, which is pretty
Wow.
cool. I met David while he was in the medical Qigong program that was in Pacific Grove. Is that where it was at the time?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I was in Santa Cruz, California for my acupuncture degree. David here was doing the medical Qigong program under Jerry Allen Johnson. And then I was doing the master's program at Five Branches. And our mutual friend Kai is how we initially met,
Mm.
crossed paths, and found a lot of passions in terms of health, wellness, Qigong, martial arts, everything under the sun. But, you know, David, why don't we start with how you got into Qigong and how you got into kind of the mind body arts? Because I think that's always a good place to start.
Yeah. I can remember it so distinctly. It was 2006. I just graduated from college. And I played football for 10 years. I was a running back. And I often say that was my first spirituality, since I was 9 years old, I played football. And there was something inside of me as a kid that was always like yearning for closeness with God, I could say, and having moved around a lot. And that was like my traumas. We've all had our traumas as kids, but kind of being moved around, I learned that I couldn't rely on the outside world for a sense of safety, you
Hmm.
know. When I had to make new friends, I was like, so essentially. But I found peace in my body when I would be in nature, when I would climb, and then I found that I was pretty good at sports.
Hmm.
So being a very shy, intuitive, empathic kid who totally absorbed my father's depression and just all his stuff, and I didn't know what was going on. I was like, why do I feel miserable? Like I want to leave this world, Part of
Yeah.
that was me, but a lot of it was actually my dad.
Yeah.
So I found a refuge in athletics. I found a refuge in sports where I could build confidence and trust in myself, and find outlets for my emotions. So then kind of fast forward into college, played football and I studied psychology. And I was like, I'm here to transform my consciousness. I'm here to awaken. And at that time in college, I began to study Buddhism and Taoism and Hinduism and all the Eastern philosophies. And man, it all just clicked in, something.
Yeah.
I can feel it now in this moment, being in the libraries, reading like these different journals, and I would like I would get this download, and then I would fall asleep at the library, just
Yeah.
I'm sure you've experienced that when you
Oh
read
yeah.
something that totally rocks you. We're like, oh, nap time.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. It's a little too much for the system.
So I was having all these awakenings in college, and I was like, well, what's next? So I graduated, and I was just praying hard, man. And when I say prayer, it was just like communing with God, through many ways, but primarily using my body, really using my, like how do I use this vehicle well. And then Qigong came along, and I was reading the magazine, What is Enlightenment? What is Enlightenment? Which no longer is in publication.
Hmm.
Uh, and I saw this article for a 4 day it was called Qigong Healing and Miracle Making for 4 days. And I was like, Qi, what? What the hell is it? 4 days? And something drew me to this, which
Yeah.
is the Supreme Science Qigong. I think it's called Qi Revolution now. And it's how I met a lot of amazing Jedis, and I'm so grateful for that foundation. And it was only $70, bro. $70 I was like, all right, I got investment in myself other than college. I was like, all right, I'm doing it.
Yeah. I got to check this out.
So
Right.
anyway, and I'll tell you what, man, like there was something so powerful about being there on that first day and doing breath work. That was the first time I really did some powerful breath work. And I was like, whoa, like, I felt the connection to like my ancient self. Like I felt connection to my soul essence that has always been there, but it was like I didn't have direct access to it in my body. It was like I would read about it and I would feel really like these sublime thoughts,
Yeah.
But something about that breath work really activated my soul, and this warrior, this kind of like warrior of light, this something activated in my heart. And I was like, okay, God, like show me the way. If I'm supposed to do this, show me the way. Like, and it was the first time I would say I felt an intimate connection with God, like very intimate, like, and I could cultivate this real relationship with the divine, with energy, with nature that I couldn't find any other way.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about that, that the breathing exercise, and that first sort of connection where there's a palpable sensation of something very real happening inside your body, I think people hear that, and I was one of these people because I know this. I hear that, and when I used to hear that, I thought like, well, that's cool in theory. That sounds like deep breathing and you got very relaxed. But I think people usually don't have the context of to what that actually feels like when they actually get breath enlivened and it's fired up inside of you. And I would love to hear your experience about what that was like the first time you did it. Because, very briefly, just to share with the people listening and with David, the first time I had an experience with breathing like that, where I think it's like the first time you practice a systemized breathing that's designed to enliven, quote unquote, energy in your body, it sounds like woo-woo, new age bullshit to a degree. When you hear that, you're like, okay, yeah, we're going to enliven something. But when it happens, there's a vibration, right? There seems to be, I remember the first time it happened to me, I remember thinking it felt like, the best way I can describe it is a bunch of bumblebees right under the surface of my skin. And it vibrated, just that zzz. Mm. And I remember thinking, what is this sensation? This is odd. Like, why is it that breathing has made my skin hum? That was sort of the place where I was. I thought, why? This is unlike a sensation I've ever felt. And I've done lots of breathing, and I've played rugby. I played some football. I did track and field. I've lifted weights. I've had my wind pushed a bunch of different times, but doing this was very different. And then I encountered that same kind of vibrational feeling in other, styles of work and health and wellness and stuff. But I would love to hear, what was your first go round with that kind of breathing where you thought, holy shit, I'm onto something here?
Yeah. So that first experience, we were laying down, and the practice is very simple, right? You lay down and basically you breathe with a lot of power into your chest. And now 12 years later, looking back, feeling that enlivening, I was like, wow, because I'm not running, the energy to run my body is not being utilized. All this energy is going straight to my lungs and my blood, and like, of course, I had no idea any of this was happening at the time.
Sure.
I was breathing and I felt like, they call it tetany, where like the nose and the mouth and the hands start to curl up a little bit. And essentially now what occurred was this feeling of electricity. I would call it, felt a little more like electricity kind of in my being. Mm-hmm. And like, I felt free of my physical body of like aches or pains on some level, but I also felt very like deeply connected in my body at the same time.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting paradoxical experience.
Yeah.
Like the Tao would say, it's like,
right.
So that experience, and then, it was about 30 minutes. So, imagine doing 30 minutes of any kind of workout as hard as you can. Mm-hmm. But then imagine that you're saving that chi, and instead of that chi going to fuel your muscles and fuel your activity, it's just fueling your blood and your channels and your vagus nerve and all of these, now all the science is backing it up.
Yep.
Wow, I'm seeing visions of of past life or visions of, and at this time I didn't believe in any of those things,
Yeah.
but now 12 years later, I'm like, oh yes, like I can see these and feel the essence of these spiritual traditions that talk about reincarnation and talk about our life as a soul, and our earth being a schoolhouse for the soul,
Mm-hmm.
So I had these revelations that I didn't have any context. I didn't know who to share it with. I didn't know what to do. I was just like, that
Sure.
shit was dope. Like warrior of light. And I knew I need to share this.
Yeah. Right.
And
Right.
then the science would come in far later, maybe 4 or 5 years later when I first started training with Wim Hof.
Yeah.
And then some of the clarity started to come in about it,
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think people like Wim Hof have really, in a sense, they've legitimized breathing practices, and they've legitimized, I mean, they've done his work and his breathing method. I mean, Stanford has been studying Wim Hof's method, and they found that his breathing method upregulates the immune system. So they've got like hard science from real institutions doing work around breathing and like what actually happens. And I think the experience of that breathing is very different than just the data that you read.
Yes.
People read about Wim Hof and they say, wow, well, this breathing thing is powerful and it does something for you, but the experience is, I mean, really something that needs to be felt, because I think that's where the disconnect is. People, I mean, a lot of people that I work with that I walk through breathing of some kind, they say, well, I know how to breathe. I breathe every day. And the analogy I've kind of started to use with people, that's like saying, outside of, a skillet and a spatula, what else is there to cooking? And that's the way I try to frame it for people, is saying like, there's a lot more to breathing than just inhaling and exhaling at the autonomic level, where it's just what our body's doing. When you take control of it and start doing something, you can cook an amazing meal. You can do something really powerful with that. So after you have your breath empowerment and you do this breathing experience, when did you make the leap to go from, okay, here's an amazing experience that I had. What transpired after that to get you into the work you're doing now, where you're teaching medical Qigong programs, which I teach at now, and the stuff you're doing. So like, how did you go from, lots of people have an experience, lots of people do. And then it's like, that's cool. And I might put that on my belt and kind of take it with me, but to fully dive into it as a life path is different.
Yeah. That's a great question. I would say that I took it one step at a time. And when I first went out to study and train with the Supreme Science Qigong Foundation, there was something very special about all of the unique souls that I met. So there was 100 people, and there was something very powerful there. I was like, wow, I've never met people so dedicated to awakening or healing.
Mm-hmm.
So it was my first taste of that. So I was like, I'm just going to keep cultivating these relationships. I'm going to keep training and just keep going down this road. And after about 2 years of training in that system, and then I started teaching certifications all over the country, which, and my dream was to travel and teach enlightenment. When I was in college, I remember writing that down my senior year. I was like, I want to travel and teach enlightenment. That's what I'm here to do.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, this is it. I'm teaching through the mechanism of Qigong, through breath and movement. And so I felt really, I guess lucky or blessed to have that opportunity. And then shortly after those 2 years, I was like, all right, God, like I'm ready for like a master. I'm ready to train with a master, open the way, and I was praying hard for months. And I remember I decided to do this Gayatri mantra. I don't know if you've ever heard of that or how familiar you or your people are with mantras. No. In the last 12 years of my life, doing mantra practice has been one of the most powerful and rewarding spiritual practices ever. And doing these sound vibrations, which are ancient, these languages of light, sometimes we call them, right? This Gayatri mantra is called the enlightenment mantra, and it takes like 45 minutes to do 108, which when you do a mala practice, typically you do like 108 of some saying,
Uh-huh.
So I'm doing this mantra, and I happened to be in 2009 going to a Qigong conference, and I remember singing this mantra in the car because I'm going to get this in today, god dang it.
Yeah.
I'm doing it in the car, and my Qigong sister, her name is Jade, and we're driving over there. And I was like, hey, can you drive so I can do my chanting? Because I start to, get other worlds start to open up when I start chanting.
Right.
I don't want to be driving. So anyhow, and then I meet my first Qigong teacher, Master Peter Andreas, who at the time he won the Qigong Sportsman of the Year in 2009, and trained with Tiger Woods' father, and was teaching these very simple and powerful and Qigong secrets to professional athletes. And he comes up to me, he looks me straight dead in the eye, and he's like, I know you. I was like, huh? It's like, you've mastered the martial arts. You're here to heal. He was like, I'm a psychic. And then he just described all of it. He's like, you remind me of Shaolin. And I was just like, and I could feel this heat in my head happening. And I was like, I don't know what's happening, but this is very real. And then throughout that weekend, he kind of felt like an older brother or an uncle. He's like, hey,
Yeah.
He would call me Baby Shaolin. He's like, hey, Baby Shaolin. Baby Shaolin, how you doing today, man? It's good to see you on the beginning of your journey in this life. And I'm like, he's like, yeah, man. And he's like, I can already see it laid out for you. I was like, well, help me find somebody to train with. I was like, who should I train with? And he says, study with Dr. Jerry Allen Johnson, or somebody who he has trained, because he's the Michael Jordan of Qigong.
Mm-hmm.
He's well known, and and I was like, okay. So I looked him up and found him online, and he was coming out of retirement
Mm-hmm.
to teach his daughter. And I was like, well, this is a pretty good sign. He's coming out of retirement right now in this moment.
Yeah.
And then, and then I decided to join the program. And then what I realized was I wasn't searching to be a medical Qigong practitioner or master or teacher or any of these things. I just knew I needed to do it for my own development.
Yeah.
I went in. So everything I've ever done was like, I need to do this for my own development.
Yeah.
I need to master these practices for my own development, my own experience, and we'll see what comes of it.
Yep.
So that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm just like, all right.
Yeah. I can relate to a lot of what you're saying too. And Chinese medicine, very similar for me. When I came into it, I thought I wasn't going in explicitly to be an acupuncturist. I was sort of going in to become an artist. I wanted to learn a healing modality and then express that stuff through, my artistic mediums. But I completely resonate with what you're saying, because I think that is how a lot of it starts. And when we start dialoguing with the arts and you start going down these roads, invariably, they end up changing you, and then you end up, I don't want to say you adapt or innovate, but you're going to have to let them come through you at some point. So you kind of take the foundational knowledge and then you do with it what you will. And you've got, this is a nice little segue into your medical Qigong program that you've got going. This is your second year?
Yes.
That's right. So just to give context, you can flesh this out, David, but David started a medical Qigong program, like a medical Qigong certification program. It's how many hours total?
200 hours.
200 hours. And David walks them through, content, curriculum, theory, application, the whole bit. He has retreats twice a year that I'm attending as sort of like faculty, where I teach some Chinese medicine theory to his groups. So why don't you talk about that a little bit, lay out what that's looking like and what you've seen, because that's a pretty cool little thing you got going.
Yeah. Thanks, man. It's a dream come true, and I feel like when I let go of the resistance to responsibility of, like, for the longest time, I was like, I don't want the responsibility.
Yeah.
I'm just a humble servant.
Yeah.
And then God just kicked me in the ass one day. It was like, hey, just start giving. Just give, share what you know. So being in year 2 now, the last 2 years, we've had about 12 students. And this year, in the second year, we're actually international now. We have 2 students, one from Sweden and one from Brussels.
That's cool.
Which is like super exciting.
That's great.
I would say, what can I kind of say about it? There's so many ways I can.
I know. A lot of different directions.
See. I guess for, kind of for your listeners, next year is the third year, the year 3. And what I feel like my purpose is, what my gift is on this planet, is to help those who feel they have a big purpose, and you're already empathic, or you're sensitive, or you have healing skills and abilities and you don't know what to do. You don't know how to cultivate these areas of your life and how to translate that into your daily life or how to translate that into your work. So I work with coaches or massage therapists or acupuncturists, people who have never done medical qigong before.
Right.
And they're seeing. One of my students came from my TRX class, which is
That's great.
a fitness class. And to see her life and her family and everything transform from it was just brings sometimes tears to my eye. I was like, wow, I'm doing it. Whether it's 12 people or a million people, it doesn't matter. So I feel like the this program is an opportunity to gather with Jedi's, and I know it's so funny because when we were together this last time in Shasta, I use that word and I use it sparingly. Actually, I use it at the right time.
Sure.
And one of my students was like, bro, I knew this stuff was powerful as we were training online, but coming here in person at the retreat, you weren't fucking kidding, man.
Yeah.
Real Jedi training. Like, this is no joke, So, if you're looking to cultivate yourself, in time-tested traditions, from Tibet, from China, we pull from, not we pull, we tune into ancestor work from some of the African tribes, that you're with Alex Kugler.
Yep.
Which feels like a whole other opening. And I would say that one of the most powerful things we can do as humans is to do that work of honoring our ancestors and forgiving our ancestors and learning that there's so much gifts that they want to give us, and we can't do it alone, So that's a big part woven into the Medical Qigong program as well. Mm-hmm. Is understanding the body as a vehicle for awakening, and we clear trauma through the sound, through the movements, through the dialogue. I call it energetic psychology. So we begin to understand the psychology behind these patterns that are showing up in our life. Like, oh wow, I have a fire deficiency. Oh, my solar plexus, my heart, I feel kind of these issues going on physically, or my digestion's not right. Oh, and also I don't have a healthy relationship with my ego.
Yeah.
Oh, and I noticed the psychology that goes into that. Some of the self-deprecating, some of the too much inner critic, So then we can map it out, and we're not just doing movements because they feel good and it lowers our heart rate and now we feel better, but we to kind of unravel the masks that we're creating in our life,
Yeah, absolutely.
Live from a more authentic place.
Well, I've got some ideas so thank you for all of that, because that gives a really nice context to what you're doing. And for the people listening, when we're talking about Qigong, for the people, because I have listeners that listen to this stuff and they're like, what is Qigong? They don't know. Qigong is, the ancient healing system that comes out of Asia, and there's various systems of Qigong. There's lots of different types, but it's sort of the sister arts, the health cultivating aspect of what they call the internal martial arts. And so when David is talking about medical Qigong, there is a context here that I think is probably relevant to give. And that is, when we talk about medical Qigong, there's an application where you're essentially treating people, and you are not only just, it's not like, okay, so we're back. So people listening that are on iTunes and YouTube, it's the first time my call has ever been dropped on the podcast, but we lost connection, so we're having to start again. So that being said, sorry for the splice in audio and video, but what I was talking about and what I was giving context to is what David does in the context of medical Qigong. So what we're looking at when we talk about medical Qigong is essentially, and David, I'm going to have you flesh this out even more, but with medical Qigong, you can actually essentially give treatments to people, which is slightly different than the cultivation of Qigong in its other forms, because people can practice Qigong as a style of movement and health cultivation for themselves. But medical Qigong actually bridges the worlds a little bit in terms of you therapeutically applying these principles to someone else's body and doing those kinds of things. And a lot of it has to do with non-physical contact. I know you guys do create physical contact, but then there's also non-physical contact, and how that applies to what we call the human energetic system. So I'm going to have David explain this, but I just want to give the context to the listeners. When we talk about bioelectricity, when we talk about the body, these are ideas that I think we should really be considering nowadays, especially because we know that the body does produce bioelectricity. We know that our body is 70 to 80% water. Central nervous system is full of electrical impulses. We are a bioelectric system. The human heart has an electromagnetic field, which heart math has proven and established. So we have energy coming out of our body. And even if it sounds like new age fluff, I think it's always a thing as Americans, since we're not trained to think about it, is to be open-minded to these ideas, to be have your brain and your mind and your spirit orienting to the possibility that maybe thousands of years ago these ancient traditions were hip to these subtler energies, and they learned how to augment them, and how to ways through breathing, through toning, how to exemplify those energies and make them stronger inside the body. And that's at the crux of what I know you do, David. So if there's anything you'd like to add to that in terms of medical qigong and the energy outside the body and people not touching one another, because some people might be like, well, that sounds strange.
Yeah. Well, the way I would first out, like there's three, there's thousands of qigongs, but I think it's good for you, those of you who are listening, to understand it really breaks down to three qigong categories. You got spiritual qigong, which is the aim is, enlightenment or a higher consciousness, right? Which is really fundamental for me and all that I work. It's like, how can I become a more awake, present being? Then you have martial qigong, which is, developing internal strength and how to project energy and kind of read the subtleties, from your opponent and those types of things. But it's a lot of, internal focus on power and creating energy through that. So medical qigong, which would be the third branch, and of course all these interweave. Is for me, if I were to sum it, it would be to get to the root of dis-ease. Dis-ease meaning there's a lack of flow, right? We get sick because our blood and our energy isn't flowing appropriately, right? There's a stagnation, there's a blockage. And oftentimes what Western medicine does is it looks at the symptom and just covers up the symptom. It doesn't get to the root why this problem was created in the first place. Mm-hmm. So Chinese medicine then looks at the natural environment, what are you eating, what are you consuming, the toxins. It looks at your emotional life. It looks at your family trauma or history, your childhood. And then, we even go into past lives, because we can carry patterns from, any time and space dimension, without getting, what's the word I'm looking for here? I guess to ground it is like our body holds memory, period. Our body, our fascia holds cellular memory. And some of that memory is divine intelligence and gifts, like each one of you listening to this has a unique gift and skill set that only you are here to bring, And what gets in the way of us bringing through that beauty and that magic is oftentimes some kind of trauma, and then that creates a belief pattern, an energetic pattern that then verifies that in our reality. So we choose partners or we choose situations that then prove to us that we're not worthy, or prove to us that whatever the case may be. Yep. So how do we unravel those stories and those patterns, not only from a psychological perspective, which is, that field of psychology is important, but without somatics, meaning without understanding of our body and our feeling sensitivities, there's only so much you can talk about. Mm-hmm. Only so much you can talk about. At the end of the day, you have to actually experience it, which is why the yoga, the qigong, the breath work, the toning, they get us into our primal nature, and I would say that on the spiritual path, I've seen far too many spiritual, whether it's New Age or even if it's not New Age, is spiritual traditions that deny the body. Is a big thing to look at, because if we deny the body, then we put then we're disconnected. How can I be more alive and not spiritually bypassed? Because I know that's a big thing now. People studying spirituality, there's so much out there. So the spirituality I'm drawn to are the ones that are earth-based, that are connected to the body, connected to the grit and the grind, and not sidestepping the shadow work, I would say. But if we don't feel our body, then it's hard to do that, and it's easy to just escape in spiritual practice, or in mental masturbation, or finding outlets that aren't healthy because we don't want to be in our body,
Agreed. And I feel like what's really elegant about these systems, about Chinese medicine and these traditions, is that they are so dynamically integrated with the body. There's so much that is available in terms of the menu of what you can do to, to transform the bullshit that we carry. And when David, I really, I like what you were saying, and I think it's an idea worth touching on for a minute. When David is talking about past lives, he's talking about cellular memory. The West just calls that genetics. What we get from our ancestors that passes down, that that like predisposes us to cancer, that predisposes us to heart disease, and predisposes us to gifts. I came in with artistic talent, and I got it from my parents. My mom is a gifted painter. My dad was an amazing colorist. My mom could draw really well and had good composition. My dad had tremendous color sense. And as a result, I got some of that. And I got a blend of it. I got a hybrid vigor of sorts that came in. And I think we overthink it. And I think, the East and West are saying things nowadays, and we're hearing two different things. People hear, oh, it's just new age spiritual bullshit. And then there's hard science. And in the end, they're starting, like you said, they're starting to kind of bridge. They're starting to cross over. And I think when we talk about these things, when people shut down to the idea of past lives or cellular memory, it's like, think about genetics. Think about what that actually means and how we can turn on or off genes with the whole study of epigenetics, right? Diet, environment, lifestyle, emotions, all those things activate or turn off genes. So to play with these ideas, I think in the context of medical Qigong is beautiful because they are an artistic rendition of these ideas. That the West is very scientific and very analytical about what we're doing. And the Chinese approached it from a more artistic perspective, which I think is what speaks to you a lot. And there's a lot of beauty in it. And same with me. I like the artistic rendition of thinking of these things and exploring them. I think it has real, actual weight. And that's why when you asked me to teach for your people, on these every semester, I thought, oh, hell yeah. Like, let's get in on this and talk about grounded Chinese medical theory. It's so cool. Well, David, what have you seen? You've had a lot of people go through your program, and I've had some of your students on my podcast, which has been cool. I've gotten them on there. What have you seen in terms of, I know it's different for everybody, but in the big picture, people that come through the Medical Qigong program that you're doing, or that are interfacing with Medical Qigong, whether they're becoming practitioners or just adding it to their repertoire of stuff, are there any common threads in terms of what you see in the people as they go through?
Do you mean like what I see in them originally, like what's drawn to them, or or what's the theme I'm seeing? Like what kind of transformations am I seeing?
More transformation, like as they go through, what shifts or changes are you seeing? Because I think that's always a good place to start from, in terms of people that want to buy into programs, right, or that go down these roads are like, well, what happens? What are some of the things that can happen? And so I would love to hear, if there's any common threads between your students in terms of experience.
Definitely. My whole body is activated right now. It's like, I love it. Like the more I study, it's like our body is a tuning fork, and it recognizes truth or falsehood,
Yep.
And, as I was thinking about your podcast today, I'm just going on a side tangent here for a moment.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, like there's so many amazing books I want to read and that I want to like recommend, and for those, I think you have this, book, but one of the best, this book here, Taoist Neigong.
Yeah.
One of the simple, powerful books I've ever read. And I've read a fucking ton of medical Qigong books.
Yeah.
Look at this thing. You can carry it around and it doesn't weigh 5 pounds.
And who's the author for the people that are just listening?
For those listening, it's Damo Mitchell.
Damo Mitchell.
I think he's based in England, actually.
Okay.
But just great stuff on the mechanics of a physical body, and then beginning to discuss, the 5 virtues. Mm-hmm. So kind of, segueing from this. So if you guys are new to Qigong and you want an amazing book, Damo Mitchell, I would, him or Dr. Yang Jwing-Ming.
Yeah.
And his work has been seminal in my understandings. And I'm actually, this next 8-week spiritual warriorship that I'm launching is going to have us reading Dr. Young's Qigong, Secret of Youth, Damo's Muscle Tendon Changing Classic.
Yeah, beautiful.
Fun. Yeah. Okay, so enough of that. I get all geeked out.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you.
So the transformation, what I've observed, across the board is like a feeling of connection to their life purpose.
Mm.
Like real connection to meaning in their life, and that they have the skills to remember how to tap into that soul purpose. It's like if there's one thing I see missing in this world is people who are lost. And if we don't have a true north, we don't know how to connect to our heart and our soul on a regular basis. Sometimes I call it energetic hygiene. Just like you brush your teeth twice a day, just like you shower at least every 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
If you don't have a spiritual practice where you're cleansing your mind and clearing the stress hormones, then you're just screwed, and life is just kicking your ass. And those lucky ones who make it out, they often have some sort of innate skill or practice that helps it. Like I think the great, I'm like the ones who were great, they had this connection to that life force. They had that connection to something deeper and meaningful in their lives.
Right.
So with that being said, the transformations, I've seen people go through, like make those hard decisions, like breaking up with a partner or getting out of a marriage or quitting a job.
Right.
Finally opening up that business, like putting themselves out there because they have the courage to finally be with, like, I'm here and this is what I'm doing. I'm no longer going to put off my calling and stay in a relationship that isn't serving, or stay in a workplace environment that is degrading to my being. And if we all live from that place of centeredness, then the world changes quite magically and quickly.
Yeah.
Because people are saying no to that which isn't aligned. And what I say is once you learn these skills or practices, no matter what area of life you want to improve on, you will see a massive change, whether it's in your relationships, or your work or your money. Like there's so many people who come in with some money issues, and it's like, oh, here's the block: first, second chakra, fear, trust, lack of safety. Yeah. How do we go back to the root? How do we heal it and feel okay in our body? So I feel like no matter where you are at in your life, if you want to up level in some area, these internal practices, and you discover for yourself, oh, here's where I need some more love and attention.
Yep.
And that ability to be a master of your own self, to self is like what's paramount on any path worth walking.
What's interesting about, there's a lot interesting here, but as you're saying stuff, I've got my mind running in like 50 different directions. I'm like, okay, what am I going to pick here to talk about? But when you're talking about these things, right, and the transformations and the things that shift for people, it's different for everybody, obviously. But the thing that I'm always drawn back to that I think is so powerful about this process is that the simple act of engaging your body and playing with the spectrum through movement, breathing, toning, these things that the body can do, opens up a dialogue that is very abstract and sort of amazing. Because I remember distinctly getting into martial arts and studying Kuksul Do, my first style, and just moving dynamically and moving in ways that I had not moved before opened up a whole new way of thinking in my mind and in my body. It made me process things so differently just to be so immersed in my body. And when that happened, I thought, damn, here's an avenue for me to basically, digest a hefty portion of my reality in a way that doesn't require any thinking. It just requires me to get in there and move. And I think, martial arts has ki training where they vocalize, that, we hear that in fighting, the Qigong system you do.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a tone for each organ, like that goes through, and you can do all of these different things. And I think that's what's always struck me about these systems and doing that kind of stuff. And it puts you into dialogue with not just operating from one center. You're not just overly mental. You're not just all feeling, and you're not just pure instinct. It's a blending of the three. And that's what I like about the three Dantian theory, instinct below and security and vitality. And then you've got the heart emotional center in the chest. And then you've got that thinking mind that can do all of the logistical shit that we need to do, like pay bills and drive cars and, do all that stuff. But I think we start to, as people, we get stuck in one of those centers, right? People are like, they're fully in the survival sex mode where they're maybe a sex addict. They've got, or they're all feeling and they can't do anything with their body, or they're all in their head, which is really common in the West, right? Everyone's like
Yes.
rattled up in their brain. And I feel like the practices in Qigong, martial arts, and Chinese medical systems, they seem to very elegantly sort of guide you through and orient you to, there's, three primary centers that you can kind of be moving through. And if you get that, earth, man, and heaven, if you get that, even I think at the most rudimentary level, if you get that at the most baseline level into your being, that's a game changer. People
Yes.
immediately, regardless of your background, whether you're the truck driver, whether you're the devout, Shaolin warrior, everybody has some kind of reorientation to like, wait a minute, there's a whole new spectrum here that I didn't really know was available to me. And that's what's really cool about it, at least for me. And I mean, I know, and I see that light, that twinkle in your students' eyes when I'm talking to them, and they're just like, what the fuck is this? This is crazy. Like, what? And I'm like, I know, it's pretty amazing. I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, what do you think, man? Like, what do you make of this? Like, people have asked me this. They're like, why is it that moving your body does anything? Like outside of exercise, how is this different than going on an elliptical machine?
Yeah.
I have my
That's
answer, but I would like to hear your answer.
That's a great question. Being such a mover all my life, playing sports and football, and then going into Qigong and a little bit of martial arts, I would say that the way we move our body is like a coding, So like, are we on a linear system? So like Western movement is very linear, like weightlifting, down, move left and right. Qigong, martial arts, Tai Chi is circular.
Yeah.
It's spherical and infinity. And when I start moving my body in these circles and infinities, it opens up a world of dimension. And I think in our West, we have a very linear Newtonian way of looking at things. When you look at it from life like that, life can be very dry, boring, meaningless, and then when you open up to like, wow, like what if I just change my perspective and look up at a 45-degree angle to my right, and access a part of my brain that I usually don't access.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember doing a form with you, God, probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I was doing some movement where I was looking and I was like over my shoulder, and as I was doing this movement, after a few minutes, I could hear one ear humming and the other ear was not humming. Like, oh, something is going on with this part of my brain. Messing with my my cerebellum or my whatever this fancy term is for your inner ear.
Yeah, right.
So I'm around to people to get like to understand, like I am in a laboratory of movement. I work at the Working Body, which is a freaking unicorn of a place, meaning that like you have some of those amazing practitioners on the planet doing Pilates, yoga, training, and something called Z Health. And the reason why I'm mentioning Z Health is it basically takes the framework of, if I can move your eyes and your body to activate certain parts of your brain and your nervous system, then we can repattern and heal trauma, or we can help an issue that we wouldn't normally be able to get from getting just stronger.
Yeah.
Or from doing physical training. So people come to me who practice physical therapy, and it's like, no, I'm not really seeing the results. I'm like, oh, because it's very linear. It's like, and there's a way in which when we move our body in these circles, in these new patterns, and we also come to terms with, like, is my breath synchronized with my movement? How many times are we at the gym and we're not even paying attention to our breath
at all? Yeah.
So I feel like those two inlays of movement in spirals and circles and spheres, which open up new areas of our brain, and the breath work, which controls like the diaphragm and the middle dancian. It's like now you actually have the skills to build a real fire inside.
Yeah.
And basically we're fine tuning our nervous system like we would an instrument.
Mm-hmm.
Finding those imbalances with the chords. We just need to tweak it up here a little bit and down here a little bit. Yeah. And now our whole, and our body is built like a tuning fork, or 2 bones to 1 bone. Our lower leg, 2 bones to 1 bone.
Right.
Tibia, femur.
Right.
So like we are a fucking vibrating chamber.
Yeah.
And when we move our body and we are attuned to our breath, time slows down. The flow state, is the modern term.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't know that I could cultivate the flow state. I just knew that I arrived there sometimes playing
Right.
football.
Right.
And I arrived
You
at
like fall into it, right?
I arrived there sometimes sprinting up, 6 in the morning, sprinting hills. I was like, oh, I'm touching God. What's happening?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like we push past those physical limits and there's something else there.
Yeah.
Uh, so with Qigong and, Tai Chi and these Eastern arts, we are able to cultivate these neurochemicals through our breath and our movement that is just profound.
It is. Absolutely. And I don't know if I've told you this. I think I have. Did I tell you what Yang Lao, who is my people listening, who is my Tai Chi teacher in China, one of my Tai Chi teachers, what he said about the West and physical movement and Eastern, about the East and movement there? Did I ever tell
No,
you?
tell me.
I mean, Kai translated this obviously, so my teacher Yang Lao
Yeah, yeah.
doesn't speak English, so this was being translated to me. But we were talking about exercise in the West and movement in the West and exercise in the East and movement in the East. And he basically, in Chinese, he translated this, but what he said was this. He said, okay, look at how people in the West move. They move, like you just said, they move linear. They isolate a body part, like a bicep. They will put it on a rack and repeatedly pump it over and over again and isolate it and make one muscle large for aesthetics and maybe for a little bit of functionality. But he says they'll just isolate their intent and their focus on this one muscle to make it larger. He said, so think about that, right? It's a kind of a mechanistic, isolated movement of the body and its tissues. And he said, now look at how the West thinks. They isolate things. They don't see it as a systemic whole. They put things into usually kind of an isolated box, right, with science. Can you repeat it over and over and over again? Can you repeat the process over and over and over again? And is it measurable? And he's like, that's exactly what people do with their bodies in the West. They look at it, they isolate a body part or a muscle, they repeat a movement over and over again to see if it's measurably larger. He said, so you'll see this parallel, and that's how Westerners, not everybody in the West exercises like that, but a lot of people. And it's usually on one plane, right? There's not always twisting and spiraling. He said, so it's sort of one-dimensional and mechanistic. He said, which is very much how Westerners think. He said, now you look at the East, things like Tai Chi, Qigong, like you said, David, spherical in nature, circular. One of the basic tenets in Qigong and Tai Chi, right? Whole body movement. So even if the lower body looks stationary, as you twist the upper, those tissues are pulling into the roots, right? The lower body. He said, but a lot of systems, right? If a wrist moves, the lower abdomen, the leg, and the feet pivot and move with it. He said, so it's a whole body systemic movement process. And he says, and wouldn't you know it, the East, that's how they think. It's holistic. It's systemic. All organs connect to other systems. It's this integrated mesh hodgepodge of everything moving together. He said, so this, the basic point was, he says, look, how you move your body dictates how you think and navigate life. Like it's straight up. And I just sat there essentially saying, holy shit, that is so accurate. That's probably one of the best descriptions I've ever heard in terms of why it's important to understand that how we move our body can change how we operate in life. If you move your body differently and intelligently and dynamically, and you pay attention to these other rhythms, it really does change. I mean, this is your flesh suit, right? You can't get away from this thing. We're all stuck in one. So if you know how to move it well, it's like it would follow suit that the ride's going to change a little bit.
Yeah, because our senses are more attuned.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
We're refining our ability to use our body, our senses, our ears, our eye, everything to a new level.
100%. And yeah, that always stayed with me. And then you've touched on this idea, which I really like, and I would love for you to flesh out a little bit here. I agree with you, and I have my own thoughts on it, but you had said something to the effect of, because there was a phase when you were really muscular and you were really like lifting a ton of weights, and you've got a naturally like muscular physique and you put on muscle pretty well. And I remember you talking about this in your lectures and hearing this and kind of coming to this realization that the more external musculature you had and the bigger your frame got, the more blood you had sort of in your periphery. And then you were talking about how as you kind of shrunk and got, a little smaller, you're not tiny by any means, but as you let your body go down a little bit, those allocated resources have more chance and they have more opportunity to kind of work into the organ systems and into the more internal reaches of the body. So I would love to hear, a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on that.
I would say that I'm trying to think of how to word it in the most simplest way. Coming, like you said, from a football background, from a really a bodybuilding background, I was like, oh, this is what peak performance looks like.
Yeah.
But then what I found, being a personal trainer for the last 12 years, is these people have all the blood in the chi and the periphery, but they're taking protein shakes. They're not eating actual food with nutrients.
Right.
And they're just empty inside. And I started to look at the lifespan of bodybuilders and these, Western athletes, and I was like, these people die young.
Yeah, they do.
And I started to wonder, why are most of them dying young? I look at football players in their 50s who obviously the head trauma is a big part of it, but but just in general, I was like, oh, once I started studying Qigong, I was like, because the organs are deficient. And I think about it like a car. If you're revving that engine on red line every day, like modern sports and bodybuilding or any kind of extreme sport, your organs are getting taxed. Your adrenals are getting taxed. And what our culture lacks is a yin practice, a water practice to refuel our organs. And so once I stopped bodybuilding, from my own aches and pains and knee injuries and doing Qigong, I felt so much more vibrant. And like right now, I feel more springy and spry, like feel in more ways younger than I did when I was in, what a Western would look at and like, oh, he's real buff and strong. But like, I didn't know how to use my body as nearly as well.
Yep.
So I would say that the ability to turn inward and nourish our glands and our organ systems, our chakras are actually all pointing toward a glandular system. Yeah. All 7 chakras are connected to 7 glandular systems. So we learn how to unlock like the diaphragm because we've been on fight or flight or post-traumatic stress disorder for 10 years. When we learn how to open up our diaphragm and learn the mechanism of breathing, but also learn some of the areas we need to forgive ourselves or forgive someone else, and we make that mental, emotional, and physical connection. Oh wow! Now I'm a new person, and those glands aren't firing the same fight or flight chemicals anymore.
Right.
And now my brain is releasing these new neurochemicals and allows me to see a different reality than I was previously. And so that I would say, like that's what this work is all about, is going more inward, nourishing the blood and the chi and the glands.
Hence the phrase that's often tossed around, internal systems, internal martial arts.
Yeah.
Ne gong, right? Internal. I mean, that's what the word, ties to internal movement. And I think that's the really interesting thing about this process when they have, the external martial arts and the internal martial arts, and the emphasis of how to essentially get movement deeper into the tissues and deeper into those glands and deeper into the cells. Like what's the science of that actually look like? And that's, I think what this stuff sort of bridges into is that external exercise is important, right? You need muscles, you need bones, but then we have all this microvasculature, and we have, how do you get into these deeper tissues? And that was, and I've told you this, I think I told this to your students when I was teaching at maybe last semester or maybe the first semester, what Dr. Yang said about chanting and about the...
Oh, yes.
Yeah. He dropped this, and I mean, David and I love this. I love this idea. But when I was living with Dr. Yang Ming back in 2013, one of the lectures he gave was about chanting, and then specifically how chanting was a form of massage for the glandular system, for the endocrine system. So he had a series of tones that he would go through that would, resonate the upper skull, a tone that would resonate the throat, the chest, the middle diaphragm area, sort of kidneys, all the way down to the pelvic floor. And it went from high notes, essentially, that you would, tone with your mouth, all the way down to the low. And what he talked about was, he says, this is the same way a cat will purr to mend broken bone. That's part of what they'll do to actually, the bones will mend faster when they get that vibration into them. He said the same way for people, we can't get inside and like jiggle or move glands, but vibration, the toning, will actually sink into those deep tissues that we can't physically move. The vibration will actually get into them and actually shake them. And he said that's why toning is so good for you. And it just goes back to this thing you're talking about, right? Like how do we get stuff from the outside to go in? And this stuff opens up, a really cool world for us to explore. I mean, in this way, that's why I think it's so amazing. And, I know it's had a powerful effect on you, the practices alone. I mean, I've watched you change from the time I met you until now in terms of how you digest life. Like you definitely are using what you teach. That's for damn sure. I know that. Mm-hmm. David, what do you think, with where the world is, right? I mean, it's a crazy place, right? America's a crazy place to live right now. We're sort of at this threshold for people are, they're really upset about a lot of different things. And I understand why. There's a lot going on and people are more disagreed and more divided. What role do you think this kind of stuff plays in the context of that?
Man, I'm so glad you asked that question. Because I deal with that in my own heart and mind every day. Because I'm pretty angry at times, and I get resentful, and then I get sad, and then I get fired up. I'm like, I am not going to divide more. I'm not going to, And I would say that these practices help us to have a conversation with each other. You know what I'm saying? Like if I'm cultivating, whether it's Qigong, meditation, or these mindful practices, I can sit down and have a conversation with somebody who is a Trump supporter and not just label them a Trump, like who is this human in front of me? Yeah. Can I talk to this human and can I see what's going on in their life? And whether it's religions or politics or, LGBT issues, there's so much to divide us. Mm-hmm. So these practices bring us back to like, oh, we're all human and we're doing the best that we can. Yeah. And when we have tools to calm our nervous system, so that instead of me getting reactive and pissed off and wanting to punch somebody, instead of that, and there's time where I'm praying, I'm like, God, I'm angry right now. Help me harness this chi. I don't want to yell at my wife or my kid. I don't want to like spout something on, so like I practice hard and I'll do more hard Qigong or I'm holding postures or I want to lift some heavy weights, and then after that, I'll do something that's soft and soothing. Like how do we have practice that we can harness the frustrations, which is so needed. But then what our culture lacks right now is how do we have practice that soften us? Yeah. So like, how do we have practice that soften us?
Well said, man.
And when we can soften, and I've seen it being in the room with, hundreds of people, it's like when we do a collective breath work together, very simply we come into heart coherence is what they call it. Mm-hmm. Heart coherence, and this is scientific fact now that the person who has the most calm nervous system, right, where their bioelectromagnetic field is much larger and expansive because they're in gratitude, because they're in love, because they're in a place of inspiration. Yeah, will always outweigh the person who's in fear and anger. Yep, will always, but it's just a matter of that person who staying grounded, right? How many times do you I'm kind of speaking to the listener here, do you feel yourself getting ungrounded by somebody else's emotions, right? It's that ability to say, no, I'm going to stay grounded in my center, and allow myself to be with this person, even though they may be attacking me. Uh-huh. Like, hey, okay, it's all right. I'm not putting up a fight here. I just want to be with you. Let's talk. Yes. And I think that's what more people need is like, can we have tea? Can we have a conversation? Right. And, I look at the political scene and it's all finger pointing, blaming, name calling. I'm like, we're not going to solve anything with name calling.
No.
Because if you call me a name, I'm gonna get mad at you.
Totally, man. It drives me nuts when I see people.
You know?
Yeah, I
But
I
to be
agree.
honest, it does. It drives me so crazy.
Yeah, it does. Same,
You
man.
know,
I
if
watch.
people,
Say it again.
go ahead.
No,
No, you go
no.
ahead.
I was just gonna say that, like I've seen people. I don't love Trump. But truth be told, like I really didn't like Hillary either.
Yeah,
I thought these are my choices.
I
These
know, right?
two bumblefuck people. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
they both have things they do well, but I'm like, good God, like I don't like either one of these people. And
yeah,
at the same time, I have friends who are Trump supporters. I have friends who are, more democratic and whatever. And I'm always blown away how people will default to, calling a Trump supporter just, you're a racist. I'm like, actually, I know this person well. I know they're not. They happen to just really agree on this one thing that he does. So
yeah,
therefore that's important to them. So they voted for him, but that reasonability, right? That ability you're talking about to be soft, to soften the position, right? To pivot and not just lead with the sword every single time, because that's what it is nowadays. It's like everyone's looking to sever, like you said, divide, conquer. It's just like, let's just tear everybody apart. And that's problematic for a bunch of different reasons. And the other thing I want to say that I really liked what you said, and the invitation I give to my clients, you're talking about how can we do these practices to have a conversation, right? To soften our emotional terrain. And this is the invitation I give to people when they're going to work with me, or if I'm going to guide them through anything that relates to what I do. I always say, look, emotions are immaterial. Like, where are your emotions, first of all? Tell me. And they're like, well, they're in here. I'm like, well, where's here? Like,
mm,
inside the
yeah,
flesh suit? I mean, do emotions stop right at the membrane of the skin?
mm,
It's a reasonable question to ask. And, people usually get kind of stumped with that. They're like, well, I just feel them. I'm like, exactly. Like, you do feel them, right? But they're immaterial. They don't have any weight. You can't put them in a box. There's no way to get an emotion out and hold it physically. And yet,
yeah,
we live our entire lives from how we're feeling, what we're
yeah,
thinking. Those things are paramount in terms of how the human species goes forward, just in terms of feeling this thing that we cannot measure or isolate or touch. And so the invitation I give to them, I say, what if I were to tell you that some of these traditions teach you how to play with that immaterial energy, like teach
mm,
you how to augment it, how to change its shape a little bit, even though it has no shape. But
yeah,
that's the thing I think that sometimes gets people to, oh, like this immaterial thing that we can all agree on, we live our life from. If there's some ways or techniques or, some methodologies that could improve that immaterial terrain of life, why not
mm,
explore it, or at least give it a shot? Like, what's the harm? What's the harm in like dabbling with some of this stuff just to see if it has effect for you? That's why people go to psychologists.
yeah,
That's
man.
why people talk about their problems, right? They have
I
to
love
like,
that analogy.
yeah, they got to move that immaterial energy, right? They got to just move emotions. And I'm like, yeah, we're all saying the same shit. Can we please get on the same page for a little while?
I know, right? As you're speaking, two things that are dropping, and one, a teacher that mentioned, emotion is energy in motion,
Yeah,
emotion,
yeah.
and then another that occurred, and that's actually in this Taoist Neigong book, which means inner skill, but essentially it's a Qigong book, But he
Mm-hmm.
just goes into a little more depth,
Yep.
and what I love is he talks about the emotional body being the interface between the spirit body and the physical body.
Mm,
So it's like if we're listening to the call of our souls, I can be rised up with inspiration and love and gratitude, and my body gets filled with that chi,
right.
and my physicality, but I can also think of something that's frustrating me, and I can immediately turn into a bad mood, and
Yeah.
then my physical body is slumped over, so each organ system has a corresponding energetic pattern,
Mm-hmm.
so like right now is the season of the lungs, which is the fall, so the lungs have a downward and inward
Yeah.
movement. So too sad, we kind of slump our shoulders. We don't have a lot of courage or self honor. We just kind of, So we begin to read these patterns in our own body, and we begin to read these patterns within, our family or our students or whatever, and we have a new relationship with life. And so that
Mm-hmm.
body or emotional body is an interface between the
Oh,
kind of seen and the seen in the physical realm.
I like that. I would say that's accurate too. I mean, I would, in my experience, that's very accurate. Yeah, that there's
Mm.
there's definitely something there. Well, David, in closing this larger
Mm-hmm.
conversation that we've had, I always ask my guests at the end if you have an invitation for the listeners. If there was people that are maybe devout, Qigong people that are coming to this and people that are completely new to this scene, like what is your invitation to people in exploring this terrain?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Gosh, my invitation, well, first and easy is like I've got a number of free material on Noble Movement YouTube.
Yeah.
So do the Tumo breath work is so simple, it's so profound. Like, if whether you're new or advanced, like
Yeah.
mastering breath work will definitely up level your ability to handle your emotions and find your center. Even 5 to 10 minutes a day.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for you, you're a dad and you're building a business. So I'm like, sometimes I don't have even 30 minutes to do a movement practice. It's
Yeah.
just, I just don't.
Same. Yeah.
And I definitely get, in a few days a week of movement, but like to have those 10-minute practices where I can, stretch my body, do some breath work is just key in the human tool bag of life,
Yeah.
And those of you who want to dive deeper, I've got a couple programs. One is called the Immortal Form, which is an 8-week deep dive, going over the Chinese 5 elements, and the emotions, the virtues, and as well as the shadows, the parts of ourselves where we get stuck. And those are kind of the first two. And really, what I'm really stoked about, I'm in 2 weeks, I'm launching an 8-week spiritual warriorship initiation, essentially, and taking what I would say is just the best of the best that I've done and what I want to share with people, from the different teachers and books and practices that help really connect our primal nature and our divine nature. It's like that path of honor and love and integrity, that if listening to this, you're here on this planet for a reason, then like this 8-week is like the crash course.
Yeah.
Let's get in your body, let's move some energy and emotion and give you practices like we've been talking about to unwind patterns and open your mind. So those are a few ways to start to plug into the work, I would say.
Beautiful, man. Thank you for that. And if people want to follow you on social media, they want to track you on, Instagram or whatever it is that you do, what are the best places to find your platform and your, social media scene?
Yeah, the Instagram is also Noble Movement, and my YouTube is Noble Movement. My Facebook right now, my personal profile is Facebook / like Beaudry.Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Beaudry.Dave. And I run a cool free 7-day Tumo challenge through Facebook Messenger. So that's actually the coolest way. If you want to have a sick ass 1-week experience, friend me on Facebook or join the Noble Movement Facebook group page. Rather, it's a Noble Movement Facebook page. There's so many platforms these days.
I know.
And then you'll get practices each day. You fill out 5 minutes of kind of who you are and why you want to do it. And that way we know you're a committed Jedi and not just some slacker.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough, man.
It's a lot of fun, and definitely want to keep these conversations with you going, man. There's so much to unpack.
There is, and I've said this before, the people that I have on, most of them are repeat guests because the topics that we're touching on, people listening, what David and I are talking about is just the tip of the iceberg of the things that we're into in the context of this stuff. David and I could geek out for days on variations of these themes. So I'm sure at some point, man, we'll have you back on, but I want to thank you for your time and just for the work that you're doing. I really appreciate it. And I know you're passionate about it. And I think having people in this field that have a lot of heart and passion and that are emotionally intelligent matters, and you're definitely one of them. So thanks, man.
Thanks, bro. Well, you too, man. Thanks for bringing me on.
Yeah.
Stoked to connect with you more, bro. And Shasta's in a few weeks, man.
I know. I'll be there. I'll be teaching.
Yeah. Right, man. Love you.
All right, man. Love you too.
So much, bro. Have a good day.
All right, man. You too. Take care.
Okay. Peace.
Bye.